Hello, and a warm welcome to another edition of the Irish Angle. As usual, I've Johnny Ward and Emma Nagle here, and we're going to talk about all the things that happened in the past week, both in Ireland and abroad. Lots to get through. Johnny, Emma, welcome to the show.
Thanks,
Hi,
Vincent.
Vincent.
Now, start off, big news breaking in Australia. Jan Brueghel, favoured for the Melbourne Cup, trained by Aidan O'Brien, will not run in the race. He has failed a veterinary examination where they say a CT scan indicated that he's at heightened risk of injury. What do you make of this, Emma?
Yeah, I suppose kind of shocking enough news coming out, and like even going back a few weeks ago, I'd say Aidan was worried enough about these veterinary protocols. They kind of came in a few years ago, didn't they? But basically, kind of the gist of the quotes he had a few weeks ago was that it was really, really hard for 3-year-olds to kind of pass these tests. Just the nature of them, I suppose their bones are still developing. And yeah, I saw the news coming out kind of early this morning. Maybe it was broken last night, but a big shock and a massive blow to like the Irish Melbourne Cup challenge. And like it's really, really disappointing. Like, because he was kind of a big superstar heading down there. And look, these protocols, you can kind of see why they've come in. I think they were saying the last 40 years the fatality rate it's 2.8%, I think, which is way above the kind of standard, like the typical fatality rate in Australian racing. So look, they were, I suppose, proactive in doing stuff like this, but it just does seem a bit unfair that it's only the Irish and other overseas runners who have to kind of go through these really stringent protocols. I think they kind of base that off the fact that the most recent limb-related fatalities were kind of from horses from overseas, but still it would kind of leave a bit of a sore taste in your mouth when you're kind of getting excited about this Irish challenge. And, you know, these Irish horses go through much, much stricter protocols than the Irish challengers. I don't know what you think about it, but that's kind of what it stings, what kind of comes across as to me anyway at first sight.
Yeah, it's very subjective, this as well, isn't it? Because like the horse doesn't necessarily have an injury. They're just saying that something on the CT scan indicates it could be a heightened risk of it.
Yeah, and even
you're
just
also like, get this
even saying that, even like Vincent, like I think the horses have to go through a similar scan like 6 weeks before they leave, or 6 weeks before they go into quarantine or something like that. So obviously, like, this horse had been scanned in Ballydoyle by like some of the best vets in the world. So like you're saying, it's totally subjective. Like I think like if the vets that Coolmore are using can't pick this up, it's surprising that anyone else would have that opinion on it.
Yeah, and then I suppose that the vets are put in a difficult position in this instance as well, because, you know, what do you do if you're there, you're a veterinary officer in Australia, and you look at the CT scan and you see something on it, even if it's something very minor, you're always going to err on the side of caution here, aren't you? What do you think, Johnny? It's a mess, really, isn't it?
Yeah, the fatality rate, 2.1%. You know, that's way too high for a race like this. It might even be too high for the Grand National. It might be too high for any race. It's certainly too high for a flat race. So I will give some kudos to the situation over there where they're looking into stuff like this. I really don't want to say too much on this because I'm not a vet and I have no idea why, you know, the veterinary people in Australia would come up with this unless they felt that it was a reasonable thing to say. Now, you're kind of implying that Aidan O'Brien shouldn't be running this horse on veterinary advice, and Aidan has said that it's a ridiculous situation, really. His comments that Emma alludes to, the Australian people are coming over to check them the next few days. They're all getting scanned over the next while, and then they check them, but very few horses pass the criteria, especially young horses. It's very difficult for 3-year-olds to get through because they're still growing and their bones are still maturing. So I wouldn't be sure about any of them getting in and being allowed to run. They were quite prophetic words. So I'm actually wary of really talking too much about this because I have no idea about horses' bones, structures, about their growth as 3-year-olds or anything like that. It's an easy suspicion to have that the Aussies just don't want more Irish winners of the race. I suppose there are worse things in the racing world than a group of, you know, what the Aussies say are the top minds in the world coming up and saying, well, listen, we worries about this horse running because we feel, you know, it might be a problem. And again, I will say, like, who might question Aidan O'Brien, but that fatality rate is far too high for a flat race. Like, it's way too high. It should be closer to nil than that.
But that's fine. I don't think there's a massive problem with the veterinary procedures. Look, I know some people might slate them, but why do the Australian horses not have to go through the same thing, or the New Zealand runners as well? You think like one rule for everyone would be a more fair way to go about it. Like that's probably
That doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
it's probably what's like fueling the kind of narrative that it might be like discriminatory against overseas runners. Like maybe that's not the case at all. But like if all horses were going through the exact same protocols, I don't think there'd be too much uproar about any of this.
The only good thing is the Irish will win it anyway. Probably Willie Mullins will win one of his too, I would have thought.
Did you see Willie was actually down there during the week? He flew down to watch them work, and he flew back 24 hours later. So
Willie has done this before, and like I swear to God, now maybe, and I'm only speculating, maybe Willie's flying business class or first class, and maybe that flight to Australia isn't quite the ordeal that it might be in one's head. But like one of the reasons I've never been to Australia or New Zealand or that part of the world is I have a bad attention span, and I do not want to go somewhere that's going to take me a day. And for Willie's done this before. I'm pretty sure he watched a horse work and came back within 24 hours. So he spent, what's that, like the guts of, how long does it take to get to Australia again? Anyway, he spent the guts of 2 days.
24 hours,
yeah. Just to see the horse work. So Willie, Dermot Well must have gotten something in your head about winning the Melbourne Cup. You've won everything else, but what a man! Like it's like, what are you up to today? Oh, I'm actually just flying to Australia. The horse is working. I'll be back tomorrow. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, which is astonishing, isn't it? Probably gets free travel. Does he, being 68? I don't know. Yeah, that's probably the key to it. The other thing. Now we move on to other things.
Sorry to interrupt, but can you imagine Willie Mullins and Aidan O'Brien being on a plane, sitting beside each other from Ireland to Australia, and you just happening to be in the seat behind them? That'd be some crack.
Yeah, especially with Aidan's not running. Be some crack, all right. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, we'll move on to other things from last week. Shark Hanlon, as we know, he sent a lot of his horses off to be sold in Doncaster last Tuesday. And then, of course, on Wednesday, he gets the result of his appeal, which I thought was bad timing on behalf of the IHRB. They could have surely told him before he sold the horses that they were reducing the ban. But anyway, they waited till a few hours later, and then they tell him that his ban is reduced from 10 months to 6 months, which means he'd really only served 3. What did you make of that, Emma?
Yeah, I looked for the timing. Definitely wasn't ideal with the dispersal sale and all that happening the day before. I think the 28 horses go, he sold 15 of them. Look, I suppose his main kind of flagship horses are still in the yard. I don't think any of the ones he sold were the kind of bigger names in the yard. So look, I'm sure he'll be fine in that regard. Look, fair enough. The ban reduced. I think everyone thought it was too strict in the first place. And it'll be interesting to see. I just saw him talking during the week. Ewig's going to be supplemented for Down Royal, I think, on Saturday. So getting another run into him, and like the timing of the ban is like really tough. Like he's going from the 1st of December for 3 months. He's going to miss the King George. And I just saw quotes from Shark. Like Shark's had a tough old week of it, I suppose. His father-in-law, Ronnie O'Neill, passed away as well. So I'd say he probably hasn't had too much time to reflect on the future so far this week. But you'd imagine Rachel will probably take out the license to cover that time. I think they were saying she couldn't get out the course the last time, but they have a bit of time to get it now. So yeah, look, he'll still have his big name horses in the yard, and look, I'm sure people will be happy enough to support him throughout it and after it as well. So look, it was good to see it get reduced, and I'm Shark Hanlon, he'll keep going, won't he?
Without a doubt he will, yeah. As much as he might tell you he won't, but of course he will. And the other thing is, presuming his partner Rachel does take out the licence, which seems most likely anyway, they were certainly indicating that she was going to try and do that course when she gets onto, whenever there's a vacancy, to sit on it. The bottom line is, it's not that much of a penalty really, is it? 3 months, and she trains the horses, they don't leave the yard, everything stays the same. Shark can still live in the house, I'm sure, and everything else. So like, what's the major problem here really? Anyway, moving on, another one from last week, Johnny. Petrol Head. We got the final verdict on what had happened in Galway and the aftermath, the investigation that followed, and it turns out there's nothing to it. The case has been closed. What did you make of that?
Yeah, like the whole Petrol Head case, and I am speculating a bit here, but I feel there was a bit of a campaign against Connections and Ronan McNally, because he was seen to be, too overt in his campaigning of horses, and found to have infringed in quite serious matters, has to be said, and the explanations from Katie Brown were difficult enough to accept, I think. But this whole thing doesn't sit well at all with me. I had a trainer getting on to me about this particular drug that was, found in Petrol Head, where, this can be extremely benign, where essentially it's a drug that is used in horses out of training and all of that. But for me, that they somehow magically found a problem with Petrol Head the day of the Galway Hurdle. And I'll always remember the day of the Racing Post when Ronan got to 12 years and another person in racing was getting an honour in the same page in the Racing Post. And there seems to be one law for Ronan McNally and one law for others in racing. And we'll talk about the Corbett's Cross case, but like I think Ronan McNally has I thought there was a bit of a vendetta against him, to be honest.
Is this
yeah, it's hard to know. Is that what?
Yeah, look, I just thought it was interesting how look, I think on the day they couldn't trace the medical records back, and then the prescription was found when the horse was in the owner's care, this Orchard Garden Syndicate. But look, it's at the end of the day, it's down to the trainer, and like the owner. Maybe the owner didn't inform Katie Brown that the horse was being treated while he was at the owner's premises, but the medical records weren't filled out. You can see why the IHRB pulled the horse out. Like if you find a prohibited substance in the horse and you can't trace it back to anything, the rules are the rules. Like I think people have to follow them, don't they?
Yeah, the other thing there is that the owners of the horse are not the Orchard Garden Syndicate. They only leased the horse, so it says that it was when it was in the previous care of its owner. It doesn't say who the owner was, so we can only presume. The only owner I know that horse ever had was Ronan McNally. I don't know what happened to it after it left him. Is there a different owner who gave the Ven Pullman or whatever the name of that drug is that has the clenbuterol in it? I really don't know. Anyway,
it was extraordinary. Yes, it was extraordinary with respect when Katie was saying that Ronan had nothing to do with the horse. Like I was there that day in Bellewstown. That was a 5-6 to 1 the field race, and how that horse could be so well backed with Ronan having nothing any more to do with it, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, well, there's lots of maybes in this game, isn't there? Anyway, moving on to last week's action. All sorts of things happening. One thing I note is we had the clocks going back at the weekend. For me, I have to say, that's the start of the National Hunt season, is it? People talk about all the different races and events, whether it be Down Royal or it's Cheltenham or whatever. But I'm sure if you're working in a yard and you wake up in the morning and it's dark, you're in trouble. It's winter season, isn't it? So what a weekend we had. From an Irish perspective, I still can't believe the amount of winners we had all over the place. We had a first and second in the Doncaster Futurity Group 1 race. 6 winners at Cheltenham over the 2 days for their October meeting, including 4 second places as well. 6 different Irish trainers had winners. Then Johnny Murtagh went off to France on Saturday and had a Group 3 winner. And then Aidan and Joseph had Group 1 winners each in France on Sunday, including the first 3 in the Criterium International, including the winner, who could be absolutely anything, Twain. What about that, Emma?
Yeah, Twain, like I suppose a massive surprise. Like he won his maiden only a week before, wasn't it? Mark Crehan rode him, and people were like, in fairness, it kind of looked like Mark made the best of it. He kind of gave him an aggressive ride, and he scooted home that day. But to come out again after such a short space of time in a Group 1 on heavy ground, it was a massive performance and a massive weekend for Ruth Bassett as well. Like he had the other Group 1 winner as well, Tennessee Stud. I think in the Twain race, was it a 1-2-3 for the O'Briens? I think Aidan had the second and Joseph had the third as well. So a big weekend there. And you mentioned Cheltenham as well. Yeah, it was brilliant to see the strength of the Irish over there. And you mentioning all the different trainers. Like you saw the likes of like Cian Collins, kind of an up and coming trainer, and Ian Donoghue. I think it was his first winner in Cheltenham as well, along with the likes of Henry and Gordon and Gavin Cromwell having winners. So like massive weekend there. But like you'd have to question, like looking at some of the races in Cheltenham, like was there I think there was a novice chase, Pat Deroux won on Friday, and it was 4, how many was it, 6 in it or something? But I think there was only one UK challenger, and it was actually funny. They interviewed Adrian Keatley before the race, saying he was the only British challenger. He said, apparently I'm the British representation here now, so really it was nearly all Irish in the race. But yeah, look, you kind of question where are the horses from the big UK yards in these type of races, like the opening meeting in Cheltenham. With the Irish obviously seem to think it's a big deal, but very, very poor representation from the UK trainers in those novice races. It was kind of surprising.
Yeah, what did you make of the week's action across the water, Johnny?
Yeah, it's an interesting philosophical debate, Vinny. When does the national hunt season start? Like for me, it might be down Royal at the weekend. For others, it's that meeting at Punchestown. Maybe for others, it's Goran, and maybe for you, it's when the clocks go back. And it did kind of feel maybe that when I suppose actually when Cheltenham comes back, that's probably when the national hunt season is back. And I don't know, was it the Harry Skelton was interviewed on Racing TV? They won one of the earlier races, maybe the first race, and it was actually so refreshing. He just said like how much the race meant to him because he was on about Cheltenham. He's like, this is our like, I don't know what his words were, like this is our Olympics or this is our place to shine. And I read that the crowds were very good for Cheltenham, which I was very encouraged about. And I was interviewing Anthony Ryan in Galway yesterday. I think he's stepping down as chairman of Galway, and he said something that really struck with me. He says, I was in Dalymount lately, and the Dalymount, like Bows are all about being a fan-owned club, but there was a little box across the way in the ground, and it said, this is the non-corporate box. And it was a tiny little box where, I don't know exactly what it was for, but they made a point that we don't do corporate boxes in Dalymount. And Anthony Ryan said to me, Galway doesn't have any corporate boxes. You princes and paupers mingle in Galway. And I hope that's what national hunt racing still is. And I hope Cheltenham can be that again, where the people mingle together. And Willie Mullins was talking about how expensive it's to go in March. You don't quite get that in the November meeting, and to a lesser extent the October meeting. And I got a great kick out of Cheltenham. Like Candana going over there, running in a handicap chase, getting to know the connections of Candana, who's probably a cheap leading light horse that Ross O'Sullivan has campaigned well, and the buzz that they got, like young Georgie taking the day off work, who's one of the owner's sons, and getting a little note from his teacher rather than chastising him for not being at school on the Friday, wishing Candana the best of luck on the Friday at Cheltenham, and the magic that they had to go over and take on other horses at Cheltenham, because Cheltenham for me is still special. I just wish British trainers would see it the same way. And then you have like Keane Collins, who I feel is a trainer. A lot of people are telling me to keep an eye out for him, how well he's going to do. And it was almost like not noticed in the race and post spotlights that his winner hadn't been with him that long, and that he was. I should really have backed him because he was like a horse that could improve, and he done it to have a winner as well at a big price. And the spread of winners was magic. Like Gavin Cromwell targeted the meeting massively, and I'd say he was very disappointed. He'd only the one winner, and Bottler Secret obviously beaten, but Cheltenham was absolutely brilliant. It really was brilliant. As for France, I mean, I couldn't get over in hindsight the price the Twain was sent off, because he won his maiden so well against exalted candidates. The Wooten Bastard horse that was favoured in the race probably went off too hard, but it was a brilliant race raid. Brian Twain could be a very good horse. I think Ryan Moore rode far better than the favourite was ridden, but for me, I got a great kick out of Cheltenham. Like I don't know if I even had a bet in the meeting, but just seeing what it means to owners to be there at any time of year. And like, it is funny what Emma's saying there, where are the British horses, because I do wonder, are the British authorities actually trying to attract owners in Britain rather than give jockeys 28-day bans for being a whip over? Like, where are the owners? Because prize money in Britain is basically better than Ireland, we can say. It's much easier to win races. And at this stage, we can say prize money in Britain is better than Ireland. Irish prize money is getting worse and worse and worse. It's easier to win races in Britain. The good races are better pots. And the owners just don't seem to be there. But for me, still, Cheltenham was magic at the weekend.
Cheltenham's always great, isn't it? Doesn't matter when they put on a meeting. The other thing is back to the Irish stuff, and on the flat, we're getting to the final stages of the Apprentice Title Championship, and we've got three lads still in contention. Three very good lads too: James Ryan and Adam Caffrey and Wayne Hassett. Wayne Hassett and James Ryan level on 31. Two winners back is Adam Caffrey on 29. This will go to the wire, Johnny, will it?
Yeah, it's been brilliant to watch. Like I've interviewed the three of them at various points throughout the season. I suppose the first thing to say is, and you always probably think, well, this is a good set of apprentices, but I think it was Ger Lyons was talking to, maybe Dermot Wells in recent years. We've a serious crop of talent now. When you see Jamie Powell, the year that he's had, forgetting about Alphonse Grant, the year that he's had, how difficult it can be, and how grounded these lads have to be in terms of the future, even if they're so good now. But Wayne Hassett has struck me as a brilliant lad. He's been minded by his connection, by his family, like say Martin Hassett, his granduncle. They've kind of minded him with a view to the pony circuit and with a view to just kind of keeping him, I suppose, at the level he's at for as long as possible. But Adam Caffrey, James Ryan is a different character, because James is very tall, brilliant fella to deal with, really good rider, and Adam Caffrey as well has had an outstanding campaign. And I was just saying, like Jack Kennedy, when I was in Downpatrick before Punchestown, Jack had 7 rides Turns out he could barely walk, and he won the first race in a horse I don't think that was overly fancied. And I was like, geez, he's going to have an unbelievable day here. Didn't have a winner for the rest of the card, and he had 7 rides. And Wayne had 7 rides on the card, including one that was well fancied that actually finished behind Twain on debut for Aidan O'Brien, or our second start for Aidan O'Brien. And Wayne had the first winner, was about 6-7 to 1. I was like, he's going to have an unbelievable day. He's going to push on. Didn't have another winner. But he, if you talk to them, they're very, very grounded. I really like that. And I get a great kick out of it. I love going to see race meetings where you have these young lads claiming 7 or 10. We talk about Keaton Kennedy, Darragh O'Sullivan, all these kids coming up. But the 3 lads, and even some of those below them at the moment, they're brilliant lads, fantastic ambassadors for the sport, great to deal with, and brilliantly talented into the bargain. So I hope the race is going to go right to the wire.
It will do, I'm sure. The other thing is, you just hope that their next season or 2 are just as good, because that's the problem with the likes of the Jamie Powells. Once your claim starts to go down, the rides can dry up. That's always an issue for these apprentices. They're hot properties when they have the big claims, but as they start to go down, people don't seem to want them as much. Anyway, we're going to move on. We've more stuff to get through. God, there's a load of stuff in this. Right, the next one is 2 sides of the same coin, perhaps. Corbett's Cross looked a good thing, a fair horse, we know that, and he was given a lot of weight away down in Wexford, but he was a major drifter on Sunday. 7-4, out to 8-1 at one stage in the 3-runner race. This is mad stuff, is it? And the winner gets back Hartwood 9-4 to 8-13, as if defeat was out of the question. Turned out defeat was out of the question. What did you make of that, Emma? Surely, there should be something. Someone should look at this, should they? The betting trends on these sort of races.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think it's been looked into yet, but maybe they are in the background now. I was actually in Wexford yesterday. I suppose the first thing to say how tough the ground was. Look, maybe that was a factor. Maybe they didn't want to absolutely murder Corbett's Cross on his first day out. I have to think back to last year as well. I suppose Hartwood beat Corbett's Cross off level weight. So look, you could kind of see why Hartwood was going to go off favourite, kind of the way they were weighted, like he had a massive chance in it. But yeah, I couldn't believe the price Corbett's Cross was. I was down there now. I didn't actually get to see him in the ring because I was getting the horse ready for a race after that. But I asked someone, and they said he looked well in the ring. Like he didn't look massively unfit or anything like that. So I walked up to watch the race then, and I saw him, was he 4-1 in the ring or something like that, which was a big surprise. Like, but I suppose giving connections, it was hard enough to back him as well when you saw that. Like, if I was getting tempted, but it was kind of a fool's game, I suppose, to be backing him there.
What do you mean by that, him giving connections?
Sure, like I suppose they'd know if he's ready, Johnny, wouldn't they? Like, so who am I to doubt him at Mullins? Look, maybe they're keeping an eye on the future with him. Look, yeah, it was a very strange one. It was a strange race. I suppose a 3-runner affair on tough ground. Maybe I don't know. I suppose the way they were weighted, they're after their race last year. Maybe Hartwood was deserved to be odds on, but I'm not sure what you thought about it.
Yeah, well, I suppose Hartwood, he's rated £15 below Corbett's Cross going into the race, and he was getting £15. So in theory, it should have been a dead heat between the two of them, but obviously most people didn't think it would be. You had one of them at 8-13, the other one as big as 8-1, as they say at one stage. But anyway, we shall see how the season progresses for both of them. But with another similar type thing again here is I just can't understand what goes on some of the time, and what are the rules, and are there any rules regarding certain things. We had a horse won in Galway yesterday called Rhythm King, trained by Mark Fahey. Horse was back from 20-1 into 8-1. What's interesting here is the horse ran 3 times earlier in the year, back in April and May. He ran in Leopardstown, the Curragh and the Curragh, over very similar trips. The race in Galway was 7 furlongs. He ran over a mile, 7 furlongs, 7 furlongs. The race in Galway was on heavy ground. His earlier runs were on heavy ground, soft to heavy and soft. So very similar. In those 3 runs earlier in the season, he finished last of 14, beaten 45 lengths, last of 21, beaten 21 lengths, 19th of 20, beaten 19 lengths. So in 3 races, he only beat 1 horse out of 55 opponents. And the first day he ran, back in April, he was dropped £1. The second day, he was dropped 3 more pounds by the handicapper. And the third day, he was dropped what seems an astonishing £7. Now, I know they do a readjustment of the handicap ratings during mid-season where they drop everything £2, but it still seems a big drop. So altogether, he went down £11 in the 3 runs. He goes to Galway yesterday, back from 20-1 into 8-1, and wins easy. So the stewards, in fairness to them, go and hold an inquiry into it, and they asked the trainer to explain what happened. He gave a couple of explanations, one of them being the fact that he'd given the horse a break, and after his disappointing runs early season. He also said that the handicap rating was very helpful to him for winning yesterday as well, and he concluded by his evidence by stating that he was not surprised by the win. So what did the stewards do? They note the explanation given and take no further action. So, like, what action can they take here, Johnny? Is there any action to take even?
Okay, there's a lot to talk about there. On the Corbett's Crossing, first of all, like the money that JP McManus invests in horses and training fees, like I couldn't even imagine what it is, right? Prize money is shite. You're very lucky to get 15% back, give or take, of the money you invest. And I've got involved in another horse recently, and again I asked myself, why do I do this? The hardship of getting the horse right, getting them well handicapped, and insider information actually absolutely is necessary in racing. And if you're the owner, if I'm the owner and I have a horse that's been laid out for a race and he's 16s into 2s and I have no money on, I might have spent 20 grand on that horse and I need to get an outlay on this. One of the reasons you get involved as an owner is you want inside information because you're the one paying the training fees, which are substantial. And Corbett's Cross at the start of last season, bear in mind, he was sent off 11 to 10 at Naas, so he seemed to be well fancied, and he ran well below his best. So he seemed to be well fancied on his stable on his season debut last year. He ran well below his best. In this race against Hartwood, obviously it was basically, surprising enough, was weighed as if it were a handicap. And me going into this race, I would have fancied Hartwood to beat him. I actually kind of fancied Buddy One over the two of them, but I would have fancied Hartwood to beat Corbett's Cross, because in my head, I think Henry de Bromhead will have his horses fitter at this stage of the season than maybe the likes of Corbett's Cross, who has bigger targets ahead. And the other thing is, at the prices, you could have backed Corbett's Cross without Hartwood at a massive price relative to Buddy One, 100%, and you got paid out. He smashed Buddy One, so there's that aspect to it as well. Now, if I'm in the betting shop and there's an American cousin of mine who likes his racing and he says, yo, Hartwood, like he's 4-9 and Corbett's Cross is 7-1, yet neither of them has run yet this season, and this should be a dead heat. How can you explain that to me? I'm like, well, Jesus, I don't know, 4-9 against 7-1. And so there's a lot of explaining to go on. We have to accept that some horses are run and they're not fully fit. It's not in the rules. We have to accept that some horses are run and are not fully fit. But I will say, like, I do find it staggering how some owners are and trainers, and particularly owners, are dealt with by the IHRB relative to some others. And I do think there's definitely preferential treatment to some owners. Like, and people give out about Jigginstown, about their operation, how ruthless they were. But Jesus, their horses try. Like, their horses are always pretty much fit, and they're not a gambling operation, and they always try. So part of me is torn. Like, if I'm JP McManus, I absolutely want inside information on my horses. I pay so much money for training, but at the same time, how can you explain a horse being 7s and 1-2 in what should be basically a match? So I don't know. Does that explain that? As for the Mark Fahey one, Mark Fahey said, well, I spoke to him after race. He said, we like this horse start there. He went off the boil a bit. We gave him a break. And in fairness, like, the horse was actually still available at sort of 12-1 on the exchanges coming to the off. And if I'm the owner of that horse, I'm delighted that this horse has been well backed, was fancied, and he did the job, because it's very, very hard to pay your bills at a low level of racing. At the same time, it was a massive improvement in form, and at least the IHRB called him in, because sometimes they don't even call horses in terms of major improvement. I've probably contradicted myself 10 or 12 times there, but that's racing.
That's the problem, isn't it? But like the other thing is, just because JP spends so much in the game, does that give him a free pass for all of these things? Like, if he is one next week that has 3 duck eggs as well and gets back from 20s into 8s and wins, will they bother bringing him in? Like, it should be the same rule, as you say, for everybody.
I think
the amount of horses that JP has in training, and if JP's horses were literally run as honest, if 100% of them were run entirely honestly, I'd still be amazed at how little he's called in.
And like, I think the core, like, look, I know the betting relationship, like the case of Corbett's Cross, like I think even watching it yesterday, like the ground, we had a horse running the bumper, the ground yesterday, like the jockeys were saying, it was extremely testing. So I think at this time of year, results like that can be thrown up a bit, taking out any of the betting element of the race. Like, why would you have Corbett's Cross firing on all cylinders to beat Hereford around Wexford when he's possibly going to be aimed at a Gold Cup in 6 months' time. So
it smacked a lot for me of Farinelli and Galway. Like it was very, very like Farinelli and Galway, where like the market was like 8s into 94, bang average horse, shouldn't be beating Farinelli any day of the week. 8s into 94 and won by about 10 lengths, and it was a lot like that seasonal comeback. And if you're called in, you can say, well, like it was his first one, he might have needed to run a little bit. It is what it is. But obviously, you have to throw your eyes up to heaven at times. The market is that volatile.
All right, look, moving on to the weekend ahead. We've got a serious weekend coming up. We've got Down Royal, obviously, Champion Chase Day. The other thing is there's a weather watch on that, because we've had Thurles this Thursday has already been cancelled for the second time in a couple of weeks over being too quick, and there's no rain forecast for Down Royal as far as we can see in the forecast at the moment. The other big thing about Down Royal, particularly with the Champion Chase, is Willie Mullins has no entry in it. He's only had one runner in the race since 2015. This is very odd, then. Is it for a Grade 1 race at a very decent track, big galloping track? Can't see any reason why you wouldn't run horses there.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I was just looking through. He's only got 2 horses entered across the 2 days, which it's strange. Big meeting. He's got one in the Grade 3 hurdle. That horse. What's his name again? He was favourite for the county or something. Anyway, but he has him in and something else in the maiden hurdle as well. Yeah, it's a strange one. And like you were mentioning the ground there, whether that has anything to do, maybe Willie doesn't want to start them off on what's likely to be kind of better ground this time of year. I don't know, but Gordon was kind of putting out a warning to Down Royal to make sure that they put plenty of water on it now. And I'd imagine that every connection going there would be the same. Like the forecast for Down Royal, it's dry all week. So you imagine they'd have to put down fairly significant water to have it ready for the likes of, Jerry Clom and the other kind of big names in that Champion Chase. Look, it's an exciting weekend. It's probably just, look, it's a pity. I was kind of talking to Johnny before we came on, like years ago, Paul Nichols used to send his big name chases over here and other kind of big English UK representation, I suppose.
He doesn't even run horses at Cheltenham now, let alone Down Royal.
Yeah, I know that's the pity of it. You would like to see, like, I think in the Champion Chase there's 9 entries and 6 for Gordon Elliott. Like Hewick's going to be probably added into that as well to add another element to it, and Envoy Allen will have a big chance in it as well. But it's kind of very top heavy, some of the races in there. But look, we'll still get to see some really good ones. I saw there's a horse, Wingman, who I'm really looking forward to seeing. He's entered in a maiden hurdle and a bumper, and Firefox is in there. Better Days Ahead, who won the Mountain Pipe, and Vital Days Ahead is in a hurdle as well. So there'll be some big names there, and it'll be a good day, good couple of days racing. But it's just pity there isn't a bit more. A bit of a spread, I suppose. Like we saw at Cheltenham, all the different connections winning. I think that adds to the atmosphere as well. Like Gordon normally dominates this, and it's no fault of Gordon's either. I mean, it's not his fault that he has the strongest challenge going up here. But I think a bit of variety among winning connections always adds to a race meeting as well.
And of course, Saturday after Down Royal, it carries on into the Breeders' Cup, which will have loads of Irish interest, presuming that the vets let City of Troy run in the Classic. But what about that, Johnny? Have you any horses you're looking forward to besides City of Troy, perhaps, for the Breeders' Cup meeting?
I'm looking forward to seeing Fiery Lucy for Gavin Cromwell running, because just Gary Carroll going over and riding. I love Gary as a character. I think he's a just really good lad to be around, good rider. And Gavin having a runner, like Gavin's done well with these good flat horses. But to be honest, though, for me, this meet is all about City of Troy. Like my first time to watch the Breeders' Cup was when Rocket Gibraltar broke down. I think it was the same one as Falbrav, and I was just getting into racing at the time. Same one as the same one as High Chaparral and Johar had the dead heat. I think it was the same meeting, or if not, it was around that time anyway. But the Rocket Gibraltar Dome Driver race, Rocket Gibraltar stablemate broke down in front. It was the first time I ever backed him, of course, and he was beaten. But I remember, like, I got a massive buzz off it, and the fact that, like, I've sympathy for Down Royal with the ground, but the fact that Down Royal leads into the Classic, I spoke to a few jockeys about it yesterday. They're all buzzing for the race, and like, whether you like dirt or you don't like dirt, just Aidan going over trying to win the race with a horse that's so lovable as well. Me and Emma got to see him close up there in the season. I can't wait to see it. Kind of find it hard to call, because if he were entirely American bred, I'd fancy him all day long, but he's not. So probably be watching brief, unless I've like 2 or 3 pints in the Harold House. I'll probably back.
Anyway, moving on. We'll give a tip for a horse to follow from last week. I'll start off with one I mentioned already. Mark Fahey having Rhythm King, but Jarlath Fahey also had one that won at Galway as well, called Nan's View. And this is an interesting filly. Well, what's interesting here as well is ran over 5 furlongs back in June, but yet it won a 1.25 mile race in heavy ground at the Curragh last week, and then wins a 1.5 mile heavy ground race in Galway yesterday. And I see that Jarlath Fahey is saying that he's excited to send this horse over hurdles. So it could be a fair hurdler now, loves the heavy ground. So if it'll get that, that's the question. It won't be getting it down Royal anyway, wherever about else during the season. What about yourself, Emma? Anything caught your eye?
Just one thing we didn't mention, I was not going to be my horse to follow, but hot as hell, it was nice to see Jesse having a Group 1 winner as well in the UK. And the form of that race that he won, the Beresford, was it, that worked out fairly well. Like the two of them won Group 1s on the same weekend. So I don't think the anti-post market reacted too heavily for him for any of the classics next year. But it was a tough performance, and it was nice to see Jessie back in, you know, the winners and closer with a Group 1 winner in the UK, and she looked fantastic as well after the race. Looking as young as ever. But my one to follow will actually be from Cheltenham. I think Johnny actually gave him a little mention earlier. Jazzy Matty, I thought was just really eye-catching for Cian Collins. He kind of alluded to the fact that Cian doesn't have this horse too long. And I'd say he's just kind of been building his confidence up a bit over fences. Obviously, he won the Brueghels a few years ago for Gordon. Did he fall first time or second time out over fences? And then they kind of rode him quietly and have been he's an improvement from run to run. I saw him winning in Sligo, and then he came here to Cheltenham. And like the way he was kind of weighted in the race, like I think he was rated about 11 pounds inferior to the winner, Petrol Head, who went off odds on. But only went down by a head. Now Petrol kind of made life hard enough for himself. But I think off America 133, Jazzy Matty, like even stepping up a trip, that was only 2 miles. I'd say 2.5, probably down the line for him. He should definitely be able to win off that mark, I'd say.
Good stuff. And Johnny, what about yourself?
I'll give Unique Journey, who ran in the nursery. It was a brilliant nursery. Like, I mean, this race had what? This is the Galway race yesterday. It had 16 runners. Like, this is the prize money in Ireland, Vinny. Like 16 runners. Now, in fairness, it wasn't a high grade race. 6,700 to the winner. So you have to beat 15 horses around Galway to win 6,700 minus sort of a third. So you might get 2 months training fees, give or take, after winning a 16-runner nursery in Galway. And then in all of that, you're trying to run into a half-brother to Ambiente Friendly who wins source codes. So that's kind of where you're at with Irish Prize Month at the moment. And maybe I'm harsh, and maybe it's easier to run elsewhere than Galway, but you have to beat 15 horses to win a nursery in Galway that has horses rated in the mid-70s in it. And you get 6,700 for the winner, and then you run into Source Code, who was very good on the day, 14s into 8s as well. But Unique Journey, who was second, I spoke to Danny Murphy before the race, brother of Martin, the Encyclopedia of Irish Racing. He'd had a brilliant double, an unbelievable double down at Dundalk the other night, and he was very sweet in him. And I was on the telly, I was like, this horse is 4s out of 7s. There's no negative for this horse whatsoever. And when you say that, you're like, ugh. Geez, this could bomb. He didn't bomb at all. He found a bit of traffic. He just ran into one. So Unique Journey, a Caravaggio bred, who's ground versatile, will win plenty of race, I think.
Good stuff. Danny Murphy, nice guy too. Anyway, that's it from this week. So make sure if you are having a bet during the week on either Down Royal or the Breeders' Cup that you do gamble responsibly, and make sure to subscribe to our channel. We've loads of other video shows, and if you haven't seen our season preview that we did last week with Paddy Flood, I think it's well worth a watch. We really enjoyed doing it, so hopefully you'll have a bit of fun watching that. And Emma has loads more stuff coming out this week as well, so keep an eye on our channel and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.